The night it happened, Clarissa Holt was standing in the warm glow of her kitchen, the faint smell of cinnamon tea drifting through the air, when her phone buzzed with a message that would change everything, a single sentence, sharp enough to slice straight through her chest. "Mom, maybe you shouldn't come to the housewarming. Garrett thinks it wouldn't look right." Clarissa stared at her daughter's words, the flickering bulb above her humming like an anxious whisper. The wooden counter felt cold beneath her fingertips. After all the years she had spent raising Talia Marston alone, working double shifts, sewing buttons at dawn, and cleaning offices past midnight, this was how her presence was now measured. Wouldn't look right. She exhaled slowly, the steam from her tea clouding her vision for a second. Outside, the evening wind pushed against her small old house, its peeling paint, its rusted gate, its narrow garden she still watered every morning, despite the pain in her wrists. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't new, but it was hers, and every corner held the story of a struggle she had never once apologized for. Talia's voice used to echo through these walls, tiny feet running, laughter bouncing, hugs that came without hesitation. But that was before life got loud, before adulthood and pride, and her well-groomed fiancé Garrett Lorne came sweeping into the picture like polished marble hiding cracks beneath Clarissa sat down, the chair creaking under her as if sharing her burden. The taste of cinnamon felt suddenly metallic on her tongue. She typed and erased replies several times before finally setting the phone aside. She didn't want to fight. She only wanted to understand when she had stopped being enough. The clock ticked softly. The room dimmed. A quiet heaviness settled around her. That's when the air shifted. A strange unease crawled across her spine, something she couldn't name yet, something that didn't belong. She walked toward the small shelf where she kept her bills stacked neatly with rubber bands. The end of the month was near, and she wanted to check the numbers to distract her mind from the sting in her chest. She reached for the stack, but before she could pull it out, her gaze landed on a thin white envelope she didn't remember placing there. No stamp, no return address. The paper looked slightly wrinkled, as though someone had handled it too long, too nervously. Clarissa picked it up. The envelope felt oddly warm, as if it had been touched only moments ago. A faint creak came from outside the window. She froze, holding her breath. Nothing. Just branches brushing against the old wooden frame. Probably. Her heart thudded softly. She slid her finger under the fold of the mystery envelope, but hesitated. She wasn't sure why the sight of something so simple unsettled her. Yet it did. She could almost feel the letter waiting, watching, like it carried something she wasn't meant to see. She looked around her old living room. The faded sofa, the chipped vase, the photographs lining the wall, all quiet witnesses of her life. Everything felt strangely still, too still. Clarissa placed the envelope on the table, trying to steady her breathing. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on her. Maybe it was nothing. But her intuition, the same intuition that had carried her through decades of hardship, told her she was standing at the edge of something she couldn't yet name. When her phone buzzed again, she jumped. But it wasn't Talia. This time, it was an unknown number, a formal tone in the preview line. "Mrs. Holt, this is regarding your property. We need to speak with you immediately." Clarissa's pulse quickened. Property? Why? Nothing was due. Nothing was pending. What could the bank possibly want at this hour? Her hand trembled as she reached for the phone. And just as she tapped to answer, she noticed the envelope on the table had slid open on its own. Inside, something dark peeked out. something she hadn't expected at all. And then she saw the first line of the letter, and her breath caught because it mentioned a name she hadn't heard spoken in 15 years. Clarissa Holt stared at the letter as though it were a ghost resurrected on her kitchen table. The paper trembled in her hands, not from the breeze slipping through the cracked window, but from the shock running through her veins. There, written in a neat, unfamiliar script, was a name she had buried long ago, Holden Pierce, a name she prayed she'd never hear again. Her breath stilled, her fingers tightened around the paper until it wrinkled. Why now? How? And who would dare send something like this without a return address? She sank into the chair, the old wood groaning beneath her, mirroring the ache that stretched across her chest. The house felt colder suddenly, shadows pooling deeper in corners that usually felt harmless. Her mind raced back 15 years, back to a chapter she kept locked away, a time when trust cost her everything. But this letter, it wasn't just a reminder, it was a warning. Her phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. Hands slightly numb, she answered. Mrs. Holt, this is Fiona Hartwell from Wellsrow Bank. There's an urgent matter concerning your property. Are you available to discuss this now? Clarissa swallowed. My property? What's wrong with it? A pause. Papers shuffled on the other end. We received a request for verification regarding the co-ownership of your house. Clarissa's heart lurched. Co-ownership. There is no co-owner. This house is mine. That's why we're calling. Someone recently attempted to add a second name to the deed. Cold electricity shot down her spine. Who tried to add their name? We can't disclose that over the phone, Ma'am, but we strongly advise you to come in tomorrow morning. Clarissa sat frozen, the ticking clock suddenly louder, sharper. Something inside her, the part that had survived storms and heartbreak, tightened into a knot. Understood, she whispered before ending the call. She placed the phone down and let silence swallow the room. Someone was trying to take her house, and someone had resurrected the name Holden Pierce. Neither of those things was coincidence. Clarissa rose slowly and began pacing the room, her hand brushing over the framed photos on the wall. Talia, as a little girl, hugging her around the waist. Birthdays, laughter, messy hair, and messy love. This house had held every memory that mattered. Who would dare touch it? Garrett Lorne's smug, perfectly polished face floated into her mind. He always acted as if her house was beneath his standards, as if her years of sacrifice were some sort of inconvenience. Could he? Would he? Her stomach churned. She needed answers, not assumptions. She turned to the envelope again. The letter felt heavier now, as if the ink itself carried a weight she wasn't meant to bear. She read the next few lines slowly. Someone close to you is not who they claim to be. Protect what's yours before it's taken again. Again, the word pierced her. Not since Holden Pierce had she felt the old tremor of danger creep under her skin. He had been trouble-dressed in charm, a man whose lies almost cost her everything. And now his name was back. Clarissa folded the letter carefully and slipped it into a drawer, far from sight but not from thought. She grabbed her coat. She needed to speak to Talia, face to face, tonight. As she stepped outside, the cold evening air slapped against her skin. Her breath fogged as she hurried down the small path toward the gate. Her mind swirled with questions, fears, and a strange rising anger she hadn't felt in years. She needed to know if Garrett had anything to do with this. The street was unusually quiet. Even the neighborhood dogs, usually barking at passing shadows, were silent. Her footsteps echoed lightly on the pavement. By the time she reached the main road to catch a bus, her phone vibrated with a new message. It was from Talia. "Mum, please don't come tonight. Garrett's in a mood. It'll only make things worse." Clarissa closed her eyes. A wave of hurt washed over her, but she steadied herself. No, she wasn't going to be pushed aside again. Not by Garrett, not by anyone. She turned back toward home, deciding she would confront them tomorrow, after the bank meeting, after she had answers. But as she stepped into her yard, something felt off. The front door was slightly open. She froze. She had locked it when she left. She was certain a faint rustling came from inside, followed by the unmistakable creak of the floorboards. Her floorboards. Someone was in her house. Clarissa's heartbeat thudded in her ears as she reached slowly for her phone, and just as she dialed for help, the living room light flicked on by itself, and a shadow moved across the hallway toward her. Clarissa's breath hitched as the shadow drifted across her hallway. Slow, deliberate, as though it knew she stood frozen at the threshold. Her fingers hovered over the call button on her phone. The living room light glowed warm and steady, too calm for the terror tightening her chest. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the shadow slipped out of sight. Clarissa swallowed hard and forced her trembling legs forward. She pushed the door open with the edge of her shoe, her throat tightening at the faint scent inside. Cedarwood cologne. A scent she hadn't smelled in years. Holden Pierce used to wear cedarwood, but he was gone. Out of her life, out of the country, maybe out of this world, for all she knew. She stepped inside cautiously, every sense sharpened. The house felt touched, disturbed, not violently, but with a familiarity that chilled her. A faint breeze brushed her cheek. The kitchen window was open a few inches. She never left it open at night. Someone had been here. Clarissa crept into the living room. Nothing looked broken, nothing overturned. If anything, it looked too orderly, as if someone had purposely returned things to their place. Her gaze landed on the center table. The drawer she kept locked was pulled open. Her heart punched the back of her ribs. That was where she kept old papers, bank records, Talia's childhood documents, and a few things she hoped no one would ever see again. She knelt and rummaged through it. Most things were untouched, but one sheet was missing, the old mortgage paper from years ago, the one Holden Pierce once tried to steal. A cold shiver crept down her spine. She eased onto the sofa, palms damp. Memories she had buried deep began rising like ghosts. Holden leaning against her doorway, smiling too easily. His promises, slick, intoxicating, all lies. The night he nearly cost her the house. The moment she realized charm could be a weapon. She had fought to reclaim her life after him. And she had won. Or so she believed until today. The smell of cedarwood still lingered. Clarissa gripped the sofa cushion to steady herself. Who else wore that scent? Who else knew about her mortgage? Who else had access to this house, this history? Her mind drifted to Garrett Lawn. Polished, calculated, always observing. He was the type who prided himself on knowing what others didn't. And he had recently been discussing family assets, a little too confidently. But cedarwood didn't match him. Garrett smelled like expensive hotels and imported cologne, never something earthy or familiar. So who broke in? She took a deep breath and walked toward her bedroom. When she flipped on the light, the answer hit her harder than she expected. The photo frame on her nightstand, Talia as a toddler in Clarissa's arms, was turned face down, carefully placed, not dropped. Not knocked over, flipped purposely, for a message. Her throat tightened. She lifted the frame with shaking hands. Underneath it was another envelope, plain, unmarked. Inside was a single sentence: "You can trust the wrong person for years without seeing the truth." Clarissa stumbled back a step, her pulse racing. The words felt like a direct strike, aimed at her memories, her relationships, her entire life. She sank onto the bed, clutching the note. She needed help. Someone who wasn't emotionally tangled in this. Someone who wouldn't dismiss her fears. Her old friend Fiona Hartwell flashed through her mind. Steadfast, steady, loyal Fiona always knew when Clarissa's instincts were right. And Clarissa's instincts were screaming now. She dialed Fiona. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Finally, a click. "Fiona, I need to talk to you, it's urgent." But no voice answered, only silence. "Fiona, are you there?" Then Clarissa heard it, heavy breathing, slow and controlled, as though someone was listening intentionally. Her chest tightened. "Who is this?" The breathing stopped. The line stayed open, eerily quiet. A soft click followed. The call ended. Clarissa gripped the phone, panic threading through her veins. Her safe world was unraveling thread by thread, and someone who knew her past, was pulling from the shadows. She stood and looked around her room, every corner suddenly unfamiliar. Then she noticed it. A small red light blinking from inside her closet. Clarissa stepped closer, heart hammering, and pushed the door open. Inside, tucked behind her clothes, was a tiny recording device, still active. Her hand flew to her mouth. Someone had been listening. Someone had been watching. And someone had been inside her life far longer than she realized. And then she understood. This wasn't a new threat at all. It was someone she trusted. Someone who had been tracking her for years. For a long moment, I just stared at the blinking red light inside my closet, feeling like the walls were inching closer. The air thickened, pressing against my ribs, and a realization began forming, slow, heavy, undeniable. Someone had been listening to me not for days, not for weeks, but for far longer. I stepped back, clutching the edge of the doorframe as memories unfurled like old film strips. The strange misplacements around the house, the quiet creaks in the night I chalked up to age, the feeling of being watched, dismissed as loneliness. They weren't illusions, they were warnings. And I had ignored them, because the truth felt too impossible. With trembling hands, I pulled the device out and held it under the lamp. A tiny serial number was engraved on its back. I didn't recognize the brand, but the sticker next to it stopped my breath. A white maintenance tag from a local home security shop. I remembered it instantly. Talia and Garrett had hired someone from that very place during their home installation last year. "He'll check your place too, Mom," Talia had said. "Your old system is failing." I had welcomed the technician in. I had even made him tea. And he had stood right in this closet while installing updated sensors. I walked to my desk, fished out the bundle of receipts and bank papers I kept, and found the yellow slip from that visit. One signature at the bottom, Holden Pierce. The room seemed to tilt. Holden wasn't gone. He wasn't out of the country. He wasn't a ghost from a sealed past. He had been here, in my house, watching, listening, tracking. My breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. I sat heavily on the edge of my bed, gripping the paper so tightly its edges cut my fingers. Why would Holden return? And why now? A memory bubbled up. His last words, before he vanished years ago, after trying to take the house from me. "Someday, Clarissa, you'll regret keeping things from me." At the time, I didn't understand. Now I did. He had been waiting, planning, watching for the perfect moment, and Garrett had unknowingly opened the door for him, by letting that old technician into my home. Or had it been unknowingly? I rose, pacing slowly, my mind weaving through months of conversations, Garrett's smug confidence, his casual questions about my finances, his comments about retirement homes, and not letting old places rot, his sudden interest in my property value, and now Halden resurfacing through that same path. Two men with motives connected by one thing: my house, my stability, my independence. But only one of them would know the true value of what Halden stole all those years ago before I took it back. Only one of them would go this far. I pulled out my old locked drawer and scattered its contents across the bed. Documents, letters, and finally, the file Garrett had accidentally taken 3 months ago when helping me sort my papers. He returned it claiming he mixed it with his office work, but the envelope was torn. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, my skin prickled. With a deep breath, I opened it again, scanning the old mortgage contract Halden once tried to snatch. A number I had forgotten stared back at me. The land attached to my house was worth 3 times more now, due to a recently approved city project. News Garrett would have known through his job at the development office. That was the connection. Not revenge, not nostalgia. Money, land, future profits. Garrett wanted the property. Halden wanted revenge, and maybe a slice of profit too, and they were working together. My stomach tightened. Talia, my sweet daughter, did she know? Did she suspect? Or had she been used just as I had? My hands shook as I flipped through the rest of the documents, and then a smaller folded paper slipped out. A note I had never seen before. 3 words were scrawled in rough handwriting. Check the basement. My pulse thudded painfully. The basement. The one place I rarely entered. The one place Halden could have gone unseen during his visit. I grabbed a flashlight, forcing every step steady as I descended into the dim, cool air. The beam swept across boxes, old furniture, memories stacked with dust. Then it landed on something new, a metal box, unlocked, sitting right in the middle of the floor as though waiting for me. I crouched, staring at it, a cold dread rippling through me. Slowly, I lifted the lid, and inside was something that made the blood drain from my face, because lying on top of the papers was a signature, fresh ink, unmistakable, and it belonged to someone I thought would never betray me. The moment I saw the signature on that paper in the metal box, my knees nearly gave out. It wasn't Garrett's. It wasn't Halden's. It belonged to the one person whose loyalty I had never questioned, not even for a heartbeat. Talia. My own daughter. Her name sat there in dark, fresh ink, like a bruise across my chest. My pulse pounded in my ears. As the flashlight trembled in my hand, I whispered her name aloud, as if saying it softly would make the truth kinder. But it didn't soften anything. Why would she sign anything down here? Why hide it in a box Halden planted? Unless... My breath caught. Unless she had been part of this from the beginning. I stood slowly, gripping the railing as I climbed out of the basement. My legs felt heavy and hollow at the same time. The house seemed quieter than usual. Too still, as if holding its breath with me. I walked straight to the kitchen table and spread the paper under the light. Talia's elegant signature. A date from 2 weeks ago. A line stating transfer of property rights upon agreed conditions. Conditions that were left blank. I pushed back from the table and closed my eyes. Memories rose like smoke. Talia's hesitant smile whenever I asked about her marriage. The way she avoided eye contact when Garrett brought up finances. Her sudden insistence that I deserved an easier life in a community home. And the sadness in her voice. That wasn't pity. It was guilt. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside into the cold evening air. The sun was setting, painting the sky with streaks of gold and ember. I inhaled deeply, letting the chill steady me. I needed answers, and only one person could give them. Talia and Garrett lived only 3 houses down. Their windows glowed warmly, almost mockingly, as I approached. Before I could knock, the door opened. Talia stood there, eyes widening when she saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here? You didn't call." Her voice shook, just slightly. I held the paper up. "Why is your name on this, Talia?" Garrett appeared behind her, shoulders stiffening. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "No." She answers first. Talia swallowed hard. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "Mom, it's not what you think." "Then explain." She stepped aside. "Come in." I walked into their pristine living room, the scent of lemon polish sharp in the air. Garrett closed the door behind us. Talia sat on the couch, wringing her hands. "I signed it because Garrett said it was only for safety," she said quietly. "He said Holden found a loophole in your old deed. He said if we didn't act fast, Holden could take your house legally." Garrett stiffened. "Talia." "No," she snapped. "I'm done lying." She turned back to me, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I didn't know they were working together, I swear it." My heartbeat eased, just barely. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Garrett kept saying you'd panic, that you'd make things worse, that he knew what he was doing." Garrett stepped forward. "Clarissa, listen." I faced him fully. "I know everything about Holden, about the listening device, about the land value, and about your role in this." He froze. The color drained from his face. Talia gasped. "Garrett! What is she talking about?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I walked toward him slowly, my voice steady. "You didn't just betray me. You used your own wife. And you brought a dangerous man into my home." Talia stared at him in horror. "Garrett, tell me she's lying." His jaw clenched. His eyes darted, calculating. And that's when I knew. He wasn't sorry. He had simply been caught. "I'm calling the police," Talia whispered, "and my lawyer." Garrett lunged forward, as if to grab her phone. But I stepped between them with a firmness I didn't know I still possessed. "You will sit down," I said, my voice low, shaking with both fury and strength. "Because tonight, Garrett, everything you planned ends." He slowly backed away, chest heaving. Outside, a car door slammed. Footsteps approached the house. A familiar voice called out through the front door, one that made every muscle in my body tense. "Clarissa?" It's time we talked. And as the door creaked open, I realized the final confrontation wouldn't be with Garrett at all, but with the one man I prayed I'd never see again. The morning after the storm felt different, lighter, almost tender, as if the world itself had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. Soft sunlight spilled through Clarissa Holt's window, brushing across her desk, where last night's plans still lay scattered. For the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel like a battleground of secrets and tension. It felt peaceful, as though something tightly wound inside her had finally loosened. She stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in a shawl, letting the early breeze stroke her face. The air smelt of wet earth and beginnings. Down the quiet path, she saw Fiona Hartwell approaching, with a small bundle in her arms. Fresh white lilies, Clarissa's late mother's favorite. Fiona held them out with a gentle smile, one filled with both apology and relief. "I thought your home deserved flowers today," she said. Clarissa took them, inhaling their clean scent. "After everything, I think it does." Fiona nodded. You did something I may never have had the courage to do. You faced all of them, even when they doubted you. Clarissa's throat tightened. I didn't feel brave last night, just determined. That's what real courage looks like, Fiona whispered. They walked inside together, where Talia Marston, already seated at the table with steaming cups of tea, looked up. Her eyes, usually sharp, now glimmered with quiet pride. Garrett Lorne just sent a message, she said. Mr. Holden Pierce finally accepted the full report. Every detail. No more hiding. Clarissa felt a wave of warmth sweep through her months of fear, suspicion, and emotional weight, finally settling into something solid. Clarity. Garrett arrived moments later, knocking softly before letting himself in. It's done, he said simply. His voice held no dramatics, no victory roar, just the calm certainty of a man who knew justice had finally caught up to truth. Clarissa studied his expression. Beneath his calmness, she saw something else. Respect. Deep, genuine respect. You led us to the truth, he said. No matter how many twists we hit, you never walked away. Clarissa lowered her gaze, but inside she felt something powerful blooming. A version of herself she had almost forgotten she could be. Hera Collins joined them last, her presence quieter than usual. She carried an old wooden box, weathered, cracked, almost forgotten. You should have this, Hera said, placing it in front of Clarissa. Your mother kept it hidden. Maybe because she wanted you to open it when you were ready. Clarissa's breath hitched. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside lay a folded letter and a small silver locket. The letter smelled faintly of lavender. Her mother's handwriting, elegant, looping, danced across the paper. My brave girl, it began. Life will test you, bend you, frighten you. But I know something you don't yet. You are stronger than anything that tries to break you. When the world becomes unclear, follow the truth inside your heart. It will never mislead you. Clarissa pressed the letter to her chest. Tears blurred her vision, but they weren't the heavy tears of grief. They were soft, cleansing, like rain nurturing new roots. Everyone quietly stepped back, giving her space. Sunlight streamed through the open window, warming her shoulders. For the first time, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt alive again. When she finally looked up, she saw her friends, her family in all but name, standing around her. Fiona wiping her eyes, Talia attempting to hide her emotions, Garrett watching with quiet admiration. Hera offering a small approving nod. Clarissa smiled, a real smile, a healed one. I'm ready, she said softly. For what? Fiona asked. For whatever comes next. She walked to the doorway, lilies in hand, sunlight spilling around her like a golden promise. And as she stepped outside, she felt the world open, not with fear, but with endless possibility. Because victory wasn't the confrontation, victory was becoming the woman who could face it. What would you have done in her place? Share your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more emotional stories. See you in the next chapter of life and mystery.